So as a quick refresher, this is the settings file that we've created in our previous project. I copied this over into our logic folder, and now what we can do is start using it to load settings from the local storage and save settings into the local storage as well. So I'll go back to my app.jsx, and what I'll do is import save settings from the logic file, settings file, and here we go. So now what I want to do is on save, when we save on the lobby view, we want to be able to store those values into our local storage. So to do that, I'll create another function. We'll call this on settings save, and that's what we're going to pass over to our component as well. So here what this will do is that it will call save settings, and the settings that it will save will be the name, which will come from this state here. It'll also be the avatar, the difficulty, and the dark mode. And we just need to trigger this call from our lobby view. So on settings save, we want to call on settings save. I'll go back to my lobby, and we'll capture this from our props right over here. And now the save settings is actually triggered as a submit event for the entire form. So what we'll do now is actually handle the form submit. So let me just fold everything here to make it easier to work with. So I'll expand this, expand the section, show me where the form is right there. All right, so I'll create a function, handle form submit. And what this will do is basically call the on settings save function. It doesn't need to provide any values because all of these values are going to be captured and passed on to the save setting function by the app.jsx file here. So I'll go back to my lobby, and now that I have this, let me go to my form, and on submit, we want to call handle form submit. Now, a very important thing to not forget is first thing you need to do in any form is to prevent the default behavior, which was to submit the form or to send the form over the internet to a server. So now if I save this, let's go back, refresh our view. Let me first show you the inspector, and let's close this part here. I'll switch over to my application view, and we see that there's nothing in the local storage. I'll go ahead and provide my name, the avatar, difficulty level, and the dark mode. If I hit save settings, that will update my local storage here with the values that we just captured, and it's now in our local storage, which means even if I refresh my view, even if I kill the application altogether or kill the view altogether and come back to it, all of these will still be stored in our local storage. So let's actually see what that looks like. If I provide another name or the same name and save the settings, the values are being updated. If I refresh, they should still be in our local storage here. Only thing is, we're not actually loading those values back into our component. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll switch over to my app.jsx. Now, when I load my app component, we want to call the load settings function from our settings logic, which really all it does, if we look at this function here, is that it gets the game settings from the local storage. If it has a value, it parses it. Otherwise, it will just return null. So over here in the app.js, we're gonna load those values and we're gonna capture them into a variable called initial settings. And then we're gonna update all of our states here to use those initial settings as the initial value. We'll do that for the name, the avatar, the difficulty, and then finally for the dark mode. I'll go into the application, and what I'll do here is I'm actually gonna
clear out everything in the local storage. So now when we load the application for the first time, let's see what is it that we're getting. Okay, we're getting an error that basically says we cannot read properties null in the app.js line 10. So what is happening is because the initial settings is currently null, since there's nothing here to be returned, we're not able to read the property name of initial settings. So what we need to do now is provide a default value. So if you don't find initial settings dot name, use that empty string instead, and we'll do that same thing for all the other states here. All right, let's save and see what happens. Looks like we're still getting the same error. And I guess what's happening is that it's still trying to read initial setting dot name. So maybe what we'll do instead is that we're gonna say, if we don't get any initial settings, let's provide a fallback object. So rather than capturing individual values in the individual states, we're just gonna have an overall fallback object. This here is an alternative. If you don't want to do the fallback object, you still can do this lengthy way for each one of those states, but that doesn't seem like a very wise idea. So let's just go ahead and set all of those in the fallback object here. All right, let's save and see what we get. So now we should be able to handle the application state when there is no values in the local storage.